Hi students, I am Sebastian Paul. In this lecture, we are discussing the legislation and global perspectives in organ transplantation. The laws of different countries allow potential donor to permit or refuse donation or give this choice to the relatives. The frequency of donation varies among countries. The first thing to be noted is the consent process. The term consent is typically defined as a subject adhering to an agreement of principles and regulations. However, this definition becomes difficult to execute concerning the topic of organ donation, mainly because of the subject is incapable of consent due to health or mental impairment. These are two types of consents being reviewed, that is explicit consent and presumed consent. The explicit consent consists of the donor giving direct consent through proper registration depending upon the country. The second consent process is the presumed consent, which does not need direct consent from the donor or the next of kin. Presumed consent assumed that donation would have been permitted by the potential donor if permission was pursued. Of possible donors, an estimated 25% of family refuses to donate a loved one's organ. Among the countries in the world, there are two types of concepts, that is opt-in and opt-out policies. And now we are going to discuss the opt-in versus opt-out policies. As the medical science advances, the number of people who could be helped by organ donors increase continuously. As opportunities to save lives increases with new technology and procedures, the demand for organ donors rises faster than the actual number of donors. In order to respect individual autonomy, voluntary consent must be determined for the individual's disposition of their remains following death. There are two main methods for determining voluntary consent, that is opt-in and opt-out. The opt-in depend upon only those who have given explicit consent are donors. In the case of opt-out, anyone who has not refused consent to donate is a donor. In terms of an opt-out or presumed consent system, it is assumed that the individuals do intend to donate their organs to medical use when they expire. Opt-out legislative system dramatically increases effective rate of consent for donation as a consequence of the default effect. For Germany, which uses an opt-in system, has an organ donation consent rate of 12% among its population, while Austria, a country with a very similar culture and economic development, but which uses the opt-out system, has a consent rate of 99.98%. The opt-out consent, otherwise known as deemed consent, support refers to the notion that the majority of people support organ donation, but only a small percentage of the population are actually registered. Because they fail to go through the actual step of registration, even if they want to donate their organ at the time of the death, this could be resolved with the opt-out system, where many more people would be registered as donor when only those who object to consent to donate have to register to be on the non-donation list. For this reason, countries such as Wales have adopted a soft opt-out consent, meaning if a citizen has not clearly made a decision to register, then they will be treated as a registered citizen and participate in the organ donation process. Likewise, opt-in consent refers to the consent process of only those who are registered to participate in organ donation. The current opt-in system consent policy assumes that individuals are not willing to become organ donors at the time of their death unless they have documented otherwise through organ donation registration. Registering to become an organ donor heavily depends upon the attitude of the individual. Those with a positive outlook might feel a sense of altruism towards organ donation, while others may have a more negative perspective, such as not trusting doctors to work as hard to save the life of registered organ donors. Some common concerns regarding a presumed consent, that is opt-out system, are sociologic fears of a new system, moral objection, sentimentality, and worries of the management of the objection registry for those who do decide to opt out of donation. Additional concerns exist with the view of compromising the freedom of choice to donate and conflict with the extant religious beliefs. Transplant priority for willing donors, also known as donor priority rule, is a newer method and the first to incorporate a non-medical criteria into the priority system to encourage higher donation rates in the opt-out system. Initially implemented in Israel, it allows an individual in need of an organ to move up to the recipient list. Moving up the list is contingent on the individual opting in priority to their need for organ donation. The policy applies non-medical criteria when allowing the individual who has previously registered as an organ donor or family has previously donated an organ priority over another possible recipient. It must be determined that both recipients have identical medical needs prior to moving a recipient up the list. While incentives like this is in the opt-in system do help raise donation rates, they are not as successful in doing so as the opt-out presumed consent default policies for donation. India has a fairly well-developed corneal donation program. However, the donation after the brain death have been relatively slow to take off. To curb organ commerce and promote donation after the brain death, the government enacted a law called the Transplantation of Human Organ Act (THO Act) in 1994 that brought about a significant change in the organ donation and transplantation scene in India. Many Indian states have adopted the law, and in 2011 further amendment to the law took place. Despite the law, there have been stray instances of organ trade in India, and these have been widely reported in press. This resulted in amendment of the law further in 2011. Deceased donation after the brain death have slowly started happening in India, and 2012 was the best for this particular program. In the year of 2000, though the efforts of an NGO called MOHAN Foundation, the state of Tamil Nadu started an organ sharing network between few hospitals. This NGO also set up similar sharing network in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and these two states were at the forefront of deceased donation and transplantation program for many years. The small success of Tamil Nadu model have been possible due to coming together of both government and private hospitals, NGOs and the state health department. Most of the deceased donation program have been developed in southern states of India. The various such programs are: for the state of Andhra Pradesh, it is known as Jeevanandan program. For Karnataka, Zonal Coordination Committee of Karnataka for Transplantation. In the state of Kerala, Mrida Sanjeevani, the Kerala Network for Organ Sharing. For the state of Maharashtra, Zonal Transplant Coordination Center in Mumbai. For Rajasthan, Navajeevan, the Rajasthan Network of Organ Sharing. For Tamil Nadu, Cadaver Transplant Program. An online organ sharing registry for the deceased organ donation and transplantation is used by the state of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Both these registries have been developed, implemented and maintained by MOHAN Foundation. However, National Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization (NOTTO) is a national level organization set up under the Directorate General of Health Services, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, and the only official organization. In India, there are 6 types of life-saving organs that can be donated to save the life of a patient. These includes kidney, liver, heart, lung, pancreas and intestine. Of late, uterus transplant also have been started in India. However, uterus is not a life-saving organ as per the Transplantation of Human Organ Act (THO Act) 2011. Recently, a scoring system that is known as Seth Donation of Organ and Tissues (S.Score) have been developed to assess the hospital for best practices in tissue donation and organ donation after the brain death. So my dear students, in this lecture we had discussed the legislation and global perspectives of organ donation. So my dear students, hope you had understood this topic. So dear students, kindly go through this assignment question. So the assignment questions are, first one is write notes on consent process in organ transplantation. Second question is compare opt-in and opt-out methods in organ transplantation. Third question is what do you mean by deemed consent? Fourth question is brief about donor priority rule. And last question is write about various organ donation programs in India. So my dear students, in the upcoming lecture we will discuss the THO Act of India. So see you soon. Until then, goodbye. Thank you and all the best.